Chapter 14. Rise of Janpads and Mahajanpads. Let's learn the Vedic age, sources of information, Janpads, Mahajanpads, life in Janpads and Mahajanpads, Magad. The Vedic age, 1500 to 500 BCE. The Vedic period refers to the time period when the Vedic Sanskrit text, that is Vedas, were composed in India. The society that emerged during that time is known as the Vedic Age civilization. It flourished between 1500 BCE and 500 BCE on the Indo-Gangetic plains of the Indian subcontinent. This civilization laid down the foundation of Hinduism as well as the associated Indian culture. As the name suggests, this period got its name from the four major Vedas or the sacred scriptures that were created during that time. The meaning of the word Vedas is knowledge. It is a collection of hymns and prayers. There are four Vedas, namely Rig Veda, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. In the later Vedic period, the compilation of Mahabharata and Ramayana epics took place. The classical Sanskrit described by Panini also emerged after the Vedic age. Early Vedic period, that is Rig Vedic period. The Rig Vedic period represents the time period when the Rig Veda was composed. The prominent features of the Rig Vedic period are given ahead. Political organization. The political units during the early Vedic period comprised Grama, that is village, Vish and Jana. The biggest political unit was that of Jana. The leader of a Jana was known as Jyeshta. The Rashtra, that is state, was governed by a Rajan, that is king. The king ruled with the consent and approval of the people. There were four councils, namely Sabha, Samiti, Vidhita and Gana, of which women were allowed to attend only two, Sabha and Vidhita. The duty of the king was to protect the tribe in which he was assisted by the Purohit and the Senani. Society and economy. Numerous social changes took place during the early Vedic period. The concept of Varna or caste along with the rules of marriage was made quite stiff. Social stratification took place with the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas being considered higher than the Shudras and the Vaishyas. Cows and bulls were accorded religious significance. The importance of agriculture started growing. The families became patriarchal. Vedic religious practices. Rishis, the composers of hymns of the Rig Veda, were considered to be divine. Sacrifices and chanting of verses started gaining significance as the principal mode of worship. The main deities were Indra, Agni and Soma. People also worshipped Surya, that is sun, Vayu, that is wind, Usha, that is dawn, Prithvi, that is earth, and Aditi, the mother of gods. Yoga and Vedanta became the basic elements of the religion. Later Vedic period. The later Vedic period commenced with the emergence of agriculture as the principal economic activity. Land and its protection started gaining significance, and as a result, several large kingdoms arose. Around 500 BCE, the later Vedic period started giving rise to the period of the Middle Kingdoms of India. Janpads and Mahajanpads. Sources of information. The sources of information about this period comprise the Buddhist literature and the Jain literature. In addition to a number of excavations, like in Kashi, Patlipatra, etc., that have been undertaken in this region. The geographical extent mentioned in these documents includes the region from Afghanistan to Bihar. The early Buddhist literature, like the Mahagovind Satta of Digha Nikaya, says that India was like a rectangle in the north and like a triangle in the south. The other literature includes Bhagavati Sutra, the Sutra Kantak, the Ashtadhyayi written by Panini, the Bodhayan Dharma Sutra, and the Mahabharata. There are some variation in different evidences, yet the historians have been able to construct the history of this period correctly. Janpadas. As per the sources, the tribes that settled in Indus Gangetic Basin were known as Janas, which were larger social units. The term Janpad, that is, foothold of a tribe, is composed of Jans, means people or subject, and Pad means foot. Janpads were the earliest gathering places of merchants, artisans, and craftsmen to marketplace or towns surrounded by hamlets and villages. Later, Janpads became the major republics or kingdoms of Vedic India with clearly demarcated boundaries. Vedic literature describes 9 Janpads, while in 6 BCE, Panini's Ashtadhyayi mentioned a list of 15 different Janpads in which Magad, Avanti, Kosal, Vats, etc. were considered very important. A Janpadin was the ruler of a Janpad. Mahajanpads. About 2500 years ago, the widespread use of iron created conditions for more sophisticated weaponry and formation of large territorial states. The Janpads started fighting one another in order to expand their territories, and some of them became more powerful than others and were known as Mahajanpads. By 600 BCE, northern India had been divided into 16 such Mahajanpads. These were Anga, that is now district of Bhagalpur and Munger in Bihar, Magad, now Patna and Gaya in Bihar, Kashi, now Benaras or Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, Kosal, now Awadh in Uttar Pradesh, Vajji, now in northern Bihar, Malla, now in eastern Uttar Pradesh, Chedi, now in Bundelkhand in Madhya Pradesh, Vatsa, now Allahabad, Kuru, now Delhi and Meerut, Panchal, now Rohilkhand in Uttar Pradesh, Matsya, now Jaipur and Alwar, Surasen, now Mathura in Uttar Pradesh, Asaka or Ashmak, now in Godavari Valley, Avanti, now Malwa and a part of Madhya Pradesh, Gandhar, now a part of Afghanistan, Kamboj, now a part of Kashmir and Afghanistan. Info Hive. The term Mahajanpada actually means great country and is derived from Sanskrit. Over a period of time, the conflicts among Janpads and Mahajanpads resulted in the emergence of 4 powerful kingdoms, Vats, Avanti, Kosal and Magad. Most powerful among them was Magad. Political life. Types of government. Depending on the type of government, the Janpads and Mahajanpads can be divided into 2 types, republics and monarchies. Info Hive. The Mahajanpadas rose before the advent of Buddhism in India. Republics. There is a mention of 10 republics in the Pali records during the lifetime of the Buddha. The Buddha himself was the son of the Shakya chief of the Republic of Kapilvastu. A few other important republics were Vaishali, Pava, Mallas, Kushinagar, etc. These republics were later won by the Magad king Ajatashatru. These republics were headed by the chiefs who were chosen by the people and who ruled with the help of assemblies, the members of which were chosen by the people. The chief of a republic was called a Raja. However, some historians prefer to call these republics oligarchies instead of republics. They say that these republics were controlled by the Kshatriyas. They owned most of the land and political power, and it were they who were represented in the assemblies. As such, it would be better to call these assemblies the rule of the few or oligarchy. The republics were less developed as compared to the monarchies. Monarchies. A monarchy was a kingdom ruled by a king. During the Vedic age, the post of the king was held by a powerful or wise person. However, it became hereditary with the passage of time. His command was the final authority in all matters. He lived in a large palace with a number of officials and servants. Magad was such monarchies, Mahajanpad. Administration. A king ruled with the help of a council of advisors or ministers who held different departments. The Purohit was the chief priest, the Amatyas were the ministers, the Senani was the army commander, the Sangrahitri was the treasurer, and the like. The smallest unit of administration was the village, which was headed by the Gramika or Gramini, that is, village headman. Villages, towns and cities. A village was very important as most people lived there. The small towns looked more like a village than a town. A kingdom comprised of small and large towns. Small towns were called puras, medium-sized towns were called nagars, and the capitals and other large cities were called mahanagars. There were forts in large cities, and a contingent of army was stationed in each Mahanagar. Taxes. A government requires funds to perform its duty. The chief sources of income for a king were taxes and services. A farmer paid 1/6 share of his produce, called the bhag, to the king, while craftsmen did free service for the king. The people who produced commodities submitted a part of the production. For instance, a weaver gave clothes and a carpenter supplied articles of furniture. In the beginning, the taxes were in kind, but later, with the introduction of coinage, that is gold, silver and copper coins were issued, taxes were paid in cash. The tax collectors visited each village for collection. Brain tickler. Why were forts built around Mahajanpadas? Social life, family and caste. A number of jatis and castes came into being, which were rooted in particular occupations like those of weavers, ironsmiths, goldsmiths, washermen, carpenters, etc. The caste system became rigid, that is, the son of a weaver could become only a weaver and nothing else. In some cases, marriages were restricted within the caste. The castes were graded, and those considered low were considered untouchable. Each caste had its peculiar traditions, customs, eating habits, and social bindings. The family continued to be the basic unit of society. The joint family system continued. The head of the family continued to enjoy a commanding position in all family matters. Polygamy and child marriages were common. Personal life. The 4 divisions or ashrams introduced during the Vedic age became relaxed, and these 4 ashrams, that is Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas, were practiced by the people of upper castes only. Position of women. Women enjoyed a very high place in the society during the Vedic age, but this started to change. The rights to education and inherited property were restricted. Only the women of higher economic and social status could get education. Religious life. The Brahmins continued to dominate the social and religious life. As the religious rites and rituals became expensive and complicated, The Kshatriyas too sought to study the scriptures in search of new rituals and rites. A change in language was perceptible as the Brahmins spoke Sanskrit while the common people preferred to speak Pali and Prakrit. Due to these reasons, Buddhism and the Jainism prospered since their sacred texts were written in Pali. Economic life, trade and occupations. Many new trades and occupations emerged, and the people engaged in them were attributed those occupations as their castes dictated. Artisans and craftsmen organized themselves into guilds. Many craftsmen and traders moved to towns and cities. Similarly, a large number of people joined the army. With the introduction of coinage, trade prospered. Settlements came up near market centers, and these later developed into cities. Patliputra, Ayodhya, Mathura and Vaishali were some important cities. Rivers were extensively used as trade routes. Sopara and Bharuch were important seaports. Major trade articles were silk, muslin, jewelry, perfumes, etc. Currency and measures. With the introduction of the coinage, the barter system was gradually phased out. The weights were in multiples of 16. Agriculture. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. One was the growing use of iron plowshares. This meant that heavy clay soil could be turned over better than with a wooden plowshare so that more grain could be produced. Second, people began transplanting paddy. This meant that instead of scattering seed on the ground from which plants would sprout, saplings were grown and then planted in the fields. This led to increased production as many more plants survived. However, it was back-breaking work. Generally, slave men and women, das and dasis, and landless agricultural laborers, that is karmakars, had to do this work. Agriculture became the main source of revenue for the state. Wheat, rice, sugarcane, cotton, vegetables and oilseeds were the main cultivated crops. Education. The Gurukul system of education of the later Vedic age continued in this period, and the important centers of learning were Ujjain, Takshashila, Kashi and Patliputra. Patliputra, that is modern-day Patna, was a center of excellence in the spheres of education, art, culture and commerce. Magad. Magad became the most important Mahajanpad in about 200 years. Many rivers such as Ganga and Son flowed through Magad. This was important for transport, water supplies, making the land fertile. Parts of Magad were forested. Elephants which lived in the forest could be captured and trained for the army. Forests also provided wood for building houses, carts and chariot. Besides, there were iron ore mines in the region that could be tapped to make strong tools and weapons. Magad had two very powerful rulers, Bimbisar and his son Ajatashatru, who used all possible means to conquer other Janpads. Mahapadmananda was another important ruler. He extended his control up to the northwestern part of the subcontinent. Rajgir, that is present-day Rajgir in Bihar, was the capital of Magad for several years. Brain tickler. In what ways was the Vajji Sangha different from the other Mahajanpadas? Vajji case study. While Magad became a powerful kingdom, Vajji, a republic with its capital at Vaishali, that is Bihar, was under a different form of government known as Gana, that is groups, or Sangha, that is organization. Vajji was a confederation of 8 clans, of which the Lichavis were the most powerful. In a Gana or a Sangha, there were not one but many rulers. The Vajji Confederacy was ruled by a tribal republic comprising of several sanghas. Each sangha was ruled by a raja. The main sanghas in the Vajji Confederacy were Lichavis, Mallas, Videha, that is capital Mithila, etc. Eminent people were chosen for each of these sanghas as representatives, that is Ganamukhyas, to the Vajji Gana Parishad, that is People's Council of Vajji. The chairman of this council was the Gana Pramukh and was often referred to as the king, though the position was not hereditary. Some other important executives of the Gana, that is council, were Mahabaladhikari, that is Minister of Internal Security, Benishya Matya, that is Chief Justice, and Dandadhikari, that is judges, etc. These republics remained independent for a long time, but eventually Ajatashatru conquered them. Both the Buddha and the Mahavir belonged to Ganas or Sanghas. Some of the most vivid descriptions of life in the Sanghas can be found in Buddhist literature. Recap: Janpad means foothold of a tribe. Northern India was divided into 16 Mahajanpad by 600 BCE. Janpads and Mahajanpads can be divided into two types, republics and monarchies. Magad and Vajji became the most important Mahajanpads in about 200 years. Vajji was under a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. Life skills. Gaurav, have you finished your history assignment about Magad?
Mother, I do not want to study history.